August 13th, 2019. Good afternoon. Today I want to talk a little bit about changes coming to the Endangered Species Act of 1973 that will affect threatened and endangered animals, plants, all the way down to fungi and the rocks, for that matter, and could actually affect us. But more than that, to start, I want to tell a little story about George Washington and the cherry tree. When I was just a kid, probably 9 or 10 years old, with Grandpa Perry down on the Ohio River, in the orchard, we were out picking cherries one day. And Grandpa said, talking about how hard to get to them there was and having to use a ladder and pick them and a little bit of effort to get cherries to be able to eat them. And Grandpa's like, so, you heard of George Washington, right? I said, oh, yeah, And he said, he cut down the cherry tree. And I'm like, yeah, he did. And at the end, he said he could not tell a lie that he had done it. But the adults knew, because when an axe been used, or a hatchet, you can tell. But Grandpa said, so why do you think George Washington cut down the cherry tree? I said, well, it's a lot of work to pick them, and when you get them, you got to spit the seed, and, it takes a minute to gather them and eat them. And it's hard to pick them off the ground, so he just brought the cherries to the ground. Easy harvest. Grandpa's like, that's good. He's like, why do you think he did it? And I said, because he didn't think about there not being a cherry tree next year or years after that, And as I've gone through life and got older and think about these stories, especially this one, I'm like, wow, George Washington was pretty smart. He brought the harvest right to the ground and easy to pick up. But there's a point in nature where we got to realize we don't want to chop the cherry trees down to pick them. We kind of want to let them live and harvest them as we go. And when you start messing with the Endangered Species Act, and I'm sure Trump's administration has a lot of smart people on it, but you got to look at population numbers in the United States, future population numbers. What's the food supply? What happens if we put nature out of kilter in these species or that? And these questions have to be answered. But more than that, these changes from 1973 was one of the few good things Nixon's administration ever did before he stood up and said, I'm not a crook. And Watergate. Of course, the Clintons and Whitewater was after that. I think everybody's on to them now. And it only took since 1990 and before for some of you. But nonetheless, this change to the act there's two big parts of it. And what it amounts to is the changes the EPA has cited on their website, and I'll post it below this, say that they're going to change, not really change, but leave open the designation between threatened animals and endangered animals. And, you hear me talk about the northern white rhino that's almost completely extinct now, or the polar bear, of course, is going extinct. Maybe another 40 years it'll be gone if things don't change. Warming waters and hunting ground depletion. The koala in Australia is on the endangered list now because of urban and industrial sprawl and all the building of in Australia. So we see animals time and again. We always think of the bald eagle or the red-tailed hawk or maybe a peregrine falcon or something. More here in Ohio, but the truth is it's worldwide. It's about the whole ecosystem. It's about nature, and it's about population and food source, because if we mess up the ecosystem, we're not going to be okay. But what they want to do is they want to redefine it so that threatened animals do not get treated with the same importance as endangered animal areas, so that if there's animals who are threatened, they might go in and say, well, that animal could last another 500 years. And I understand, you don't want some fungi or one strain of clover to keep you from, doing something positive with the land. But with all the oil drilling and forestry, I guess there's a point there where we got to ask ourselves, how much is enough? And if you start taking threatened animals and don't treat them as endangered, then they become the endangered ones. This part doesn't make sense to me. And the other part opens up a gateway for businesses and, technology industry to go into an area where there are threatened or endangered species and provide data and present it to the public so they can do and develop the land that says that social and economic impact is of greater need to humanity than the endangered or threatened species. And always humans come first, because if we're not here, we can't be the animal's animal. We can't be stewards of nature. But we're supposed to build within nature, not on top of nature. So what we have is these changes will alleviate this designation from threatened to endangered animals and make more threatened animals become endangered. And it's just logical. We need to look at population studies and about food source. That's key here. But to allow businesses, technology industry to go into a town where endangered species exist and say, we want to drill oil, and because you're broke here, we should do it, even though we know it'll poison the land. So the reality is lay people aren't going to understand in a local town. The EPA was supposed to protect people from big business. We went through things in this country, in Canada, this world, clear cutting trees without replanting. Right now we're fracking for oil in the southeastern states, the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, when we frack for oil, we're shooting chemicals, acetone, toluene, sulfuric acid down a hole to blast the oil out. This runoff flows right unmitigated into the Gulf of Mexico right now under Trump's administration. And he isn't going to do anything to stop it because it would cost money for business. So the day is coming where we just got to say exactly how much oil do we need, exactly how much wood do we need within reason. And at what cost? Do you want your grandchildren and children to see the animals, or do you want them to look at pictures of the animals? If we aren't careful, we might be looking at pictures of humans someday saying, yeah, they were here. Right. You never know. You don't want to extinct yourself. Nonetheless, I still believe animal protection is important. Threatened and endangered species should be acknowledged as they are and protected just like they are. And I hope that when these circumstances come up, as this bill probably will get accepted, that people on a local level are smart enough to tell. You go to Wyoming, there's so much land in Wyoming where you're not allowed to live. A little population, over 500,000 people. Dr. Robert Ferneau, a good friend of mine, lives in Cody in the Bridger Mountains. You're not allowed to live there. You'll never be allowed to live there. It's about population, sustenance, and what the land can produce. Reality is, you wouldn't have any water if it never rained, and you wouldn't have any reserves if you didn't have a lake or a stream. So the reality always is on us to be honest and virtuous. And remember, we are the animal's animal, right down to the plants, rocks, and sand. I hope y'all have a good day. Peace, y'all. Keep thinking and complain right now. Complain. Send emails to your congresspeople and tell them you don't like these changes. Animals need protection too, just like me and you. Peace.